The biggest reason founders stay stuck isn't a lack of actual knowledge. It's bad decisions. Every week I see founders changing offers, rebuilding the funnels, hiring the wrong people, chasing shiny objects, and wondering why growth feels impossible. The reason many businesses stay stuck at the same revenue level isn't because the owner lacks knowledge. It's because they are constantly making reactive decisions based on actual emotions, urgency, and short-term actual pressure. One week they are like launching a new offer, the next week it's like changing the pricing, and then another week they are rebuilding the entire funnel. Then 6 months later, they are wondering why nothing seems to be actually working. Scaling isn't about making more decisions. It's about making better decisions. The higher you climb in your business, the less your success depends on effort and the more it depends on actual judgment itself. The difference between a 20K a month business and a 200K a month business is often the quality of decisions being made by the actual founder under pressure. So in this video, I'm going to walk you through the exact decision-making framework that helps great founders avoid costly mistakes and scale faster. And this framework that I'm about to actually share also has helped me personally make better decisions, not only in my business, but also in my personal life. So in this video, I want to actually share the 10 frameworks you need to have and almost every founder needs to have in order for you to make much better decisions inside of your business. So in that way, you can actually scale your business much faster as well and avoid making really costly mistakes. So I'm gonna share 10 frameworks that are actually gonna help you to not only make better decisions, but avoid costly mistakes when it comes to actual decision making. Because sometimes the decisions we are making are only short-term benefit. In the long run, there maybe could turn out to be actual disaster. So let's begin with the framework actually one. The first order versus the second order thinking. This is something that really elite founders use a lot inside of their businesses. Jeff Bezos has used it for Amazon. Bill Gates has used it for Microsoft. Currently, I also have seen Elon Musk has also made a appearance on a talk on a TED talk where he was talking about decision making, and he also referenced the first order versus the second order thinking framework. So most founders stop at the first consequence, but elite founders, really elite founders, billionaire founders, think about the second, third, and the fourth consequence, right? For example, you decide to lower your prices. And to you, it sounds like, hey, that's a good decision because now we have more people actually buying. So that sounds really great, okay? Now, if we look at the second order effect, now it's like, hey, but a lower quality of clients enter, which means we need more support requests, which we also need bigger team because the team workload is increasing. And with that, our profit margin also shrinks. So now what sounded like a good decision, which was like, hey, we're getting more people to buy because we're lowering our prices, end up not being a good decision at all. Because you have to understand the first order effect is usually giving you the effect that you actually want to see. The second order effect is usually the effect that you maybe haven't actually thought about before you have made that decision. So suddenly the good decision can also become a bad decision. Let me give you another example. So let's say you hire a new salesperson. So you have more sales capacity. That's the first order effect. The second order effect is suddenly more fulfillment pressure, more onboarding requirements, more delivery complexity, potential decline in client actual experience. The lesson is never ask what happens next after I have made this decision. You have to ask yourself is what happens after I have made this decision? What is the second effect that's going to take place? Then ask it again. This single habit itself, this entire framework can save you hundreds of thousands in bad actual decisions, okay? So to give you another example, coming back to my personal experience with this, is sometimes I thought, hey, we need currently to increase our sales capacity. Okay, so I thought, hey, let's book in more calls for the week and let's take on more clients because we will have more revenue, we can scale faster. The first idea to my business partner and me sounds great. We are getting more sales, we are making more revenue. The second was, hey, but we also need to fulfill them. What is our actual capacity? Because maybe we don't actually have the capacity to fulfill that many clients as we want to onboard. We also have delivery complexity because now we need to actually fulfill more clients than we currently are fulfilling, and we already are struggling with the clients we currently have. So we also have potential decline in client experience, which meaning we're also getting a lot of refunds. So we made that decision actually. Just to let you know, we made that first decision. We were bringing in more clients without really looking at the second order effect. And then all the things happened. More fulfillment pressure happened. Onboarding was even more, there was more requirements on onboarding. Our delivery was stretched out totally. So that means some of the clients had good experience and some clients actually had bad experience. And then also a big one was we had so much refunds, so much churn because we couldn't actually fulfill the clients. So again, just want to let you know, it's like what first looked like a good decision turned out to be an actual bad decision, okay? So let's move on to the framework number 2, which is the constraint framework. Most founders focus on actual symptoms. Great founders focus on actual constraints. A lot of great founders are focusing on constraints because once you have removed the constraint, you unlock the next level. The symptoms are just the symptoms. With symptoms, you can't really get to the root cause. If you get to the root cause, right, and you solve the root cause, that's when you get really to the next level. So every business has one bottleneck. It's one. It's not usually 10. A lot of founders feel like, hey, there's 10. It's the leads, it's the sales, it's this, it's this, it's this. No, you only can have one at a one time only, okay? So one. The mistake most founders make is trying to fix everything simultaneously. And that's the biggest problem. So imagine this. Leads are coming in, sales calls are happening, close rates are decent, delivery is overloaded. The constraint isn't lead generation, it's fulfilling. Adding more leads will actually make the business worse. Before making any decision, ask, what is the current constraint inside of the business? Because sometimes it's like we have a lot of people, because I would give you most examples that I have seen is you would see a founder says, well, a lot of people are leaving. We should increase the leads. We should increase more sales to replace the people that are leaving. Okay, so now we're getting more people in, which sounds like a really good decision. But then when we really look at it, when we look at the actual constraint, it's like, hey, people are leaving because the fulfillment is bad. So by adding more people, we have more people actually leaving, which is damaging even our reputation more. So without fixing the actual fulfillment, we can't fix the actual business. So this is something you need to really think about it. So again, and we're going back to the first framework, which is the first decision really looks good. It sounds good because it's like, hey, we need more leads because some clients are leaving, which is good. But when we look at the second consequences, we're also with like time increased, capacity increased, we also need to stretch fulfillment and then breaking the actual business reputation as well. Now the second order effect is looking like it's an actually bad decision. And when we are talking about the second framework, the actual constraint is not to get in more clients to replace the clients that are leaving, but is to actually fix the fulfillment, okay? So before making any decisions, you usually have to come to an actual question. What is the current constraint? Then ask, if I solve this problem, will revenue actually increase? Because many activities create movement, but not actual growth. So find the bottleneck, solve the bottleneck, and then repeat the question again. What is the next? Usually every single business, doesn't matter what type of business, will only have one constraint. When you fix that constraint, you will have a new constraint. By fixing every constraint inside of the business at every single level, you move up a level. It's like you unlock the next level. But you don't have to work to work on everything to fix everything simultaneously. You have to work with one thing only, fix the constraint, move to the next level, and repeat the process. As we are going through these frameworks, I want you to drop a comment down below and tell me which decision cost you the most money inside of your business. I will read every single comment and I will reply to you, trying to really help you to understand what can you do to avoid it and what frameworks really can actually help you. Now let's just get back to the actual video. So let's move into the framework number 3, is the reversible versus irreversible decision framework. And this is really famous framework for Jeff Bezos. Jeff Bezos actually made this framework famous. He called them type 1 decision, type 2 decision. You see, most founders treat every decision like life or actual death. That's why they get actually stuck. So the type 2 decision is easy to reverse. So examples: testing ads, changing landing page copy, adjusting pricing, new outreach strategy. These should be made quickly. Speed wins here, right? You can make them quickly. Hey, yeah, let's test ads. Let's run this ad because we can test it against another ad. Let's change the landing copy, see how it performs. Let's adjust the pricing here. Let's try this new outreach strategy, right? Speed wins. You can make quick decisions here. Then you have type 1 decision. It's really hard to reverse. So example, hiring executives, taking investments, long-term partnerships, and major repositioning. These deserve deep consideration. The mistake that I see is that a lot of founders spend weeks deciding on type 2 decisions and only 5 minutes deciding on type 1 decisions. You have to do the actual opposite. Your type 2 decision should be made really, really quick. Let's test the ad, change the landing page copy, adjust the pricing. Let's try to improve this. But when it comes to something serious like hiring executives, you're hiring a CEO, you're hiring a director, you're hiring a strategic partner, you are hiring maybe even like a CFO, right? You are looking for an investor, you are looking for a great accountant, you're looking for a great lawyer, right? Or you're looking to take investment, you're looking for a long-term partner maybe, or you are trying to really recreate the entire foundation of the business, or maybe you're trying to recreate the entire service or the product itself, right? These deserve deep consideration, because the mistake that I see is, like I already said, is founders spend weeks deciding on type 2 decisions and only 5 minutes deciding on type 1 decision. So you have to do the opposite. So the framework number 4 is the opportunity cost framework, which is really important here. Every yes creates a no. So most entrepreneurs forget this. Whenever you are evaluating an opportunity, you have to ask yourself, what am I saying no to by saying actually yes? So example is, you decide to launch a second business. Sounds really exciting, but you are saying no to scaling the current one, improving the systems in the current business, hiring key staff, deepening the actual expertise. You don't build great companies through actual additions, you build them through elimination. So every opportunity has also a hidden cost. So always identify it. So what I have seen in my personal life is this. For example, I was building one company, and then once we had a little bit of profit, I said, hey, let's just put this into investing and let's just run another company and let's just do a lot of investing. So by choosing to do investing, I'm currently taking the time out from the first company. I'm taking the time out from the first company, which is also taking the full potential away from the full company as well. Because if you start additional things, you're taking a time away from the first thing that you could really develop to the fullest potential. Because you always have to ask, have this thing that I'm currently building has already reached the fullest potential? Has it reached the full potential? If the answer is no, if the answer is no, then you cannot move on to something else. But if the answer is like, yeah, we are selling the business, it has already gone to like almost maxed out to the potential, then yeah, you can start something. But if you look at it and be like, no, it hasn't. Like, I could scale even this more. I could improve the systems. I could hire better people. I could deepen the expertise. I could become better. Then the answer is no. It's like you cannot add more things. So that's why you have to usually look at the opportunity cost framework itself, right? Because every yes always also creates a no. So framework number 5, which is really what I love, this is one of my favorite frameworks, is number 5, is the 10-10-10 framework, okay? This is one of the most powerful emotional decision filters. Whenever you are facing a difficult choice, you have to ask, how will I feel about this decision 10 minutes from now, 10 months from now, and 10 years from now? Most emotional decisions optimize for the next 10 minutes, right? Most emotional decisions, what I'm going to say one more time, optimize for the next 10 minutes. Great decisions optimize for the next 10 years. So let me give you an example to better understand this, right? So firing a poor performing employee, 10 minutes, it's like, hey, it's painful because I have to get rid of this and I maybe have to spend other couple months to find a new one. I have to spend months to train, right? So 10 minutes is really painful. 10 months, it becomes a relief. It's like, hey, 10 months from now, I already have a better person. I have somebody already trained in. They're performing much better as well. 10 years, it's like, hey, one of the best decisions I possibly made to fire that poor performing employee. Because instead of that employee, I got a really solid player. I trained them in, good on the process, good in the frameworks. It was really solid on decision making. One of the best decisions I ever made. So from 10 minutes now, it's like, hey, it's painful because I need to find another person. I'm gonna a little bit struggle to find another person for maybe a couple months, train them in, do that. But then 10 months later, you're like, hey, that's really a relief already, because now I have a better person in this position, because now I can focus on other things, right? Before I couldn't focus because he was really underperforming. 10 years from now, it's like, hey, that was the best decision I ever made, right? So founders often confuse short-term discomfort with bad decisions. They're not the same actual thing. You have to look at this, okay, 10 minutes, 10 months, 10 years. So a framework 6, the regret minimization framework, another Bezos framework. Imagine you are 80 years old, looking back, which choice would create less actual regret? This framework is really powerful because it removes the actual fear. Many founders make decisions to avoid actual embarrassment, not to create success. Then they say, well, then they stay and they say like, hey, they stay and they say, bad partnership, bad client relationships, bad business model, because they're worried about what others think. So you have to ask yourself, which decisions would my future self thank me for? And the answer is usually the obvious one, because we have to look at this. If you're, let's say you make a decision now and you're not really with the decision happy now, because it's like a tough decision to make and maybe there's a lot of work required. But then if you imagine you are, let's say 50, 60, 70, 80 years old and you look back, would you say to yourself, if everything works out, you would say like, hey, that was the best decision I made? And if that's the case, then yes. Right? Which you have to understand here is this. Which choice would create less regret? That's the focus on. Which of my decisions will give me less regret when I'm going to be 50, 60, 70, 80, okay? So framework number 7 is the data versus story framework. Most founders get trapped by actual stories. One bad sales call happens, suddenly the offer isn't working, a client leaves, suddenly the market is saturated, ads stop performing for 2 days, suddenly paid ads don't work anymore. Stories create emotional actual decisions, right? So let's say the offer isn't working and client leaves, right? Then you start saying, well, it's the offer, it's this, it's that, like, hey. Or let's say the market is saturated, ads stop performing for 2 days, and then you're like, well, ads don't work. Or let's say paid ads don't work anymore, and you start creating like, and the reason you're creating these stories is because maybe you had the one bad month with actual ads. And I see this all the time. I have spoke to business owners that say, hey, ads don't work. And it's like, hey, what makes you think that ads don't work? Well, I tried them and like the cost was through the roof, the wrong audience. It's not for me. It's maybe for Coca-Cola, but it's definitely not for me. For me, I cannot spend millions and millions to get one client. And this all experience only happens is because they are telling themselves a story. They have sold themselves on an actual story. When you look at the data, it's completely something else, right? So data creates intelligent decisions. Before making a major decision, you have to ask, what does the actual data say? Okay, so let's say one bad sales call happens. What does the data say? If you look at the actual data, and where's the data in the sales call? If you review the actual sales call itself, we can actually see what's happening, what's not actually happening, what was working, what questions were asked. We look at the data. Let's say the offer isn't working. What is the data supporting? What data is supporting this decision or this actual conclusion, right? So the market is saturated. Do we have data to tell us the market currently is saturated? Or maybe because the ad stopped performing for 2 days, maybe the ad, something's wrong with ad. So why would we think the market is saturated? Do we have actual data, okay? So what does the actual data say? It's really important question here. Not what do I feel is happening, because whatever I feel is happening usually is not the thing that is actually happening. The larger the company becomes, the more dangerous emotional storytelling really becomes, okay? The more you tell yourself the stories and the more you sell yourself on the stories, the more you jeopardize the actual growth of your own company. Framework number 8, the expected value framework. This is how investors think. Most founders ask, what is the safest option, right? Elite founders ask, what has the highest expected value? What has the highest expected value? So I know the reason most founders will usually ask themselves, what is the most safest option, is because they don't have risk capacity. They don't have a huge risk capacity and they don't like taking a lot of risks. And obviously because of that, they always like to play safe. And the reason they're staying small is because they always try to play safe. Where when you look at an elite founder, he really understands the risk ratio and the risk reward. So that's why they say, hey, what has the highest expected value that we actually can get from this? Let's include the decision. If I make decision, what is the highest expected value? But from a smaller founder, they will usually say, well, what's the safest option? A bigger elite founder just understands, okay, so if I'm taking a risk and the risk is 80% and the 20% I can make this decision, and then 20%, let's say I pay currently 10 million, okay, there's 80% of chance me losing that. And then there is 20% chance of me actually gaining 100 million in the next, let's say, 5 months. So then we look at the actual numbers. We look at, hey, what are the chances that the 20% actually happens? Okay, what is the highest expected value? And then you start playing with the risk ratios. So you maybe say, hey, 80% is too big of a risk. I could take a risk, let's say 75%. What has the highest expected value? So sometimes you have to look at actual risk ratios and you have to look at the capacity of taking risks as well, because most times you maybe have 20% of actual this working out and you're receiving the highest reward, and 80% you're failing. And most of the times that 20% is enough for you to actually make that bet that it will actually work out, okay? So example A, let's just give you a couple options here, okay? Option A, 90% chance of making $10,000. Expected value is $9,000, okay? Option B, 20% chance of making $100,000. Expected value, $20,000, okay? So the second option carries more uncertainty but creates better long-term actual outcomes, okay? Scaling requires founders to stop optimizing for certainty and start optimizing for expected actual outcomes. Maybe, so when you look at this, it's like 90% chance of making 10,000, expected value, it's like 9,000. 20% chance of making 100,000, expected value is 20,000. So in the long term, this works out much better. So the same with the risk capacity that I was talking before as well. You have to look at the long term versus the short term, and you also have to look at your risk capacity as well. Okay? As we are going through these frameworks, I want you to drop a comment down below and tell me which decision costs you the most money inside of your business. I will read every single comment and I will reply to you, trying to really help you to understand what can you do to avoid it and what frameworks really can actually help you. Now let's just get back to the actual video. So framework number 9 is the 80-20 decision filter. Some of you probably have already heard about the 80-20 rule, but if you look at most businesses, 20% of activities in those businesses are responsible for 80% of revenue. 80% of activities are responsible for 20% of actual revenue in those businesses. The same, I could say, 20% of people are responsible for 80% of actual results, and 80% of people are only responsible for 20% of results. Once you have identified which of the 20% are actually moving the 80% of revenue, or which of the 20% of people are getting 80% of results, you can start making much better decisions, right? Most revenues come from very few actual activities, yet most founders spend their time on low impact work. So before making any decisions, you have to ask yourself which actually will move the needle inside of my business. Will this move one of the core growth drivers inside of my business? If not, it's just a noise and you're probably spending time on something that's not going to actually impact the business itself. So you can also have, let me give you some examples: more qualified leads, higher close rates, better retention, increased lifetime value, okay? If none of those are driving more qualified leads, high close rates, better retention, increased lifetime value, it's probably noise itself, okay? The fastest growing businesses obsess over a few critical variables that actually move the needle inside of the actual business. Everyone else gets distracted. So let me give you something bigger here, okay? Sometimes you could have, let's say, email marketing, you could have paid ads, let's say a DM setter, a cold outbound DM setter, and let's say Instagram channel, right? You're posting content. And if you look at all of those activities, you could identify that, hey, ads and email is making 80% of revenue. Everything else is just chipping in for the 20% of the rest of the revenue, okay? Which is still valuable. Now, let me give you something to kind of a mind blower here. You could also have currently, let's say you're building out YouTube and content on Instagram, and you could say, hey, well, those activities are not really generating revenue, but those activities are the long-term growth opportunities. Because maybe, yes, the content is not growing currently, it's not generating the revenue, but if you really look closer and you're like, hey, if I keep going with the content, I get better, I get content creator, and I grow my YouTube, suddenly 80% will be the content and 20% of your revenue will come from ads and email marketing itself, okay? And that could happen. That change usually happens. It's like for most businesses, let's say for Alex Hermosi, you could look at his business model before and you could be like, hey, ads were responsible for 80% of revenue. Content or anything else was just responsible for 20% of revenue. Now you look at it and it's like, hey, content is responsible for 80% of revenue and everything else is just responsible for 20. So suddenly that change happens. So you also need to identify when that change possibly can actually happen as well, okay? So moving on to framework number 10, which is the CEO framework. As your company grows, your role changes. At 10K months, you solve problems itself. At 50K months, you manage systems. At 100K months, you manage leaders. And at 500K plus months, you allocate actual resources. The question every founder should ask before making a decision is this the decision a CEO should be actually making? Or am I operating like an actual employee? Okay. Many founders remain trapped because they continue making operator level decisions long after the company has outgrowing them itself. Let me give you some examples here, okay, before we get into the next one. Let's say you currently are at 50K a month, right? You're kind of managing systems, trying to improve systems, trying to do other things. Suddenly you get, let's say, to 500K a month, and you currently are trying to solve problems, try to manage the systems to better improve systems. So what ends up happening, you are not doing the CEO's work. You are currently doing the employee's actual work. Or let's say you're jumping still on the sales calls when you are at 500K a month. Like, you are not doing what a CEO should be doing. You currently should be building a strategy. You should be building a vision. You should be driving your actual company forward. You should be driving it into future, scaling it, trying to find the right actual leaders, trying to also understand how you can better allocate resources, better manage resources, and how can you actually scale company. So always look at it. Are you actually making decisions as a CEO currently at the position at the actual level you currently are in the business? Or are you operating like an actual employee? Because many founders remain trapped because they continue making a low operator level decisions long after the company has outgrown them, okay? So business growth is rarely limited by information. Most founders already know enough to actually scale. The real challenge is consistently making high quality decisions under uncertainty. Whenever you are stuck, return to these actual frameworks that we have discussed, right? So 10 frameworks. So the first one is first order versus second order thinking. Second framework, constraint framework. Reversible versus irreversible decisions. That's the third framework. Fourth framework, opportunity cost. Fifth, one of my favorite, 10-10-10 thinking framework. Sixth, regret minimization. Seventh, data versus story. This is super important if you're really trying to currently scale company above 100K. It's like we have to just look at the actual data, not emotions, not story, because usually if you look at the companies, most companies are making emotional decisions, and that's the reason they are currently stuck. 8, expected value. Then we're looking at expected value. So we're looking at actual risk ratio, risk capacity. How do we manage risk? What is the long-term value versus short-term value? Should we be going for long-term or short-term, right? 9, 80-20 decision filter. We already identified that. 10, CEO level thinking. So all of these decision frameworks should help you to make much better decisions in the company. Avoid also costly mistakes in the company as well, okay? The founders who scale the fastest are not usually the smartest guys. They are the ones who have systems for actual thinking. A great CEOs, great leaders, great elite founders have really great systems for making decisions, because when emotions are high, systems beat the actual instincts themselves. And when business scales, the quality of your decisions becomes the ceiling of your actual growth. Usually the reason most people are trapped is because of their decision making, right? If you really rip off the funnels, rip everything, it's the decision making that usually keeps the business actually stuck or plateaued. Over the years, I noticed that the biggest growth bottlenecks happen when founders focus on the wrong priorities at the wrong actual stage inside of the business. So what I have actually done, I have documented the exact roadmap we use to identify what matters for most businesses when they're actually scaling, dependent on the stage you currently are. If you would like to access it, head over to my Instagram through the link in the description and DM me the word roadmap, and I will send it to you totally for free.